So in today's video, I'm going to walk you through how to use Claude Code tab on the desktop app, from the most basic to intermediate skills that you can apply for all of your future workflows. When most people hear Claude Code, they immediately think terminal, command line, black screens with a lot of white text. Very technical stuff. But hey, I get it. I'm not a developer either. My eyes glaze over whenever I see a black terminal with a bunch of white text in it. So here's the thing. Claude Code now has a code tab built right into the desktop app. And so using it the same way you do with Claude Chat, you don't have to open up a terminal, you don't have to install anything, you don't have to memorize any commands. You just start talking to it and tell it to do whatever you want it to do. So why use Code tab instead of just regular Claude Chat? There's 3 different reasons. The first being, when you ask it to build something, it actually builds it, whether that's code. Again, you don't have to understand anything about code, but it can actually code to build apps, to build documents, to build anything else that you might want it. It's a real file that exists somewhere on your computer or even on a browser if you want it to be. The second is that you're actually giving it very specific identity based on your tone, your structure, the rules that you want it to follow every single time. It reads all of that automatically every single session, almost like a set identity. So the third reason is that you can actually layer in these things called Claude Skills, which are basically reusable instructions that trigger for specific tasks. Whether that's specific formatting you want, layout, any content you want it to include or exclude, it will carry out those instructions every time when you trigger it. All of this sounds great, right? So let's get into it. Today I'm going to show you how to build a custom proposal generator from scratch. Again, no coding, no terminal. We're just going to use the Claude desktop app and go through it from start to finish so that you can create your own projects as well. Before we dig into the details, hey, I'm William, founder of Pathlight AI. We build systems that run your business while you focus on growing it. Whether you're a business owner or just want to work smarter, this channel's for you. So subscribe for future videos, and you can also find more information in the description link below. Now let's get into it. All right, before we start building, here's a roadmap. These are the 6 things I'm going to show you as we go. Each one comes up naturally during the build, so you'll see exactly how we're going to implement it, but let me just give you the rundown. First tip is going to be, how do you set up Claude.md file? So this is an overview file that you're creating for your Claude Code so that it knows exactly what to do at a strategic level. You want to give Claude.md some context about who you are, what you're using this tool for. For example, for me, running Pathlight AI, I have this Claude.md set up so that it knows what kind of business I'm running, which is basically to help small businesses implement AI workflows. And it has that context that it pulls from whenever it needs to build new tools or projects. The second one is going to be Claude Skills. So these are incremental documents that you can create in order to provide additional instructions for specific tasks. And so what this means in execution is, if you want to build a proposal, then you want it to have a certain format each time, you want to have the right structure, the right tone, and so you want to set up a skill document that lays out all of those components. So whenever you're building a new proposal, it's referring back to that skill document to know exactly what to build. So this way you produce consistent results rather than relying on AI and the black box that it is to produce something differently each time. The third one is going to be permissions. So this one will be pretty quick, but it can really save you a lot of time in terms of how quickly you have to review what Claude Code is producing. At first, you want to make sure that Claude Code isn't doing anything weird or doing something that you don't want it to do. But over time, you want to save all of that into Claude.md, which retains that memory. Over time, you want to spend less time editing all the stuff that Claude is doing. So you can have a way to bypass all of these confirmations, which will save you a lot of time depending on the project. The next one is going to be custom/commands. And so this will make a lot more sense once we start going down the build, but essentially you're creating specific commands or shortcuts that you can reference to run a specific task. So instead of telling it to do something from start to finish, hey, build a proposal, save it to my documents, and then send it out to my client. If you build a / command to do that on its own from start to finish by giving it the right instructions, then all you have to do is click into that / command or type it in, and it's going to launch that by itself. The fifth is going to be how to interpret the output. So we'll go through this in a little bit more detail, but Claude's going to produce a lot of different content, whether that's an app, preview of a website you're building, could be a document or a spreadsheet. You want to make sure that you're interpreting it so that down the line you can make the right edits. Finally, I'm calling this recovery, but there's going to be a lot of times where Claude Code isn't going to produce something that you thought it was going to produce. So how do we debug that? How do we make sure it doesn't happen again in the future, and making sure that your Claude Code continues to evolve to fit your needs? So what is Claude Code in plain English? It's a tool built into your Claude desktop app, and you'll see it as the Code tab up top. It's similar in terms of user experience as using normal Claude chat. But now if you go to the Code tab here, you're able to do a lot more. This is where you're able to write in the same way through chat down in this chat box here. But the output of what you get is Claude Code connecting to your computer and writing a code, whether that's creating a new app, creating a new website, creating any tools that you want, connecting to Excel or anything else that you use day to day, and being able to update that based on the instructions that you give it here. So it's basically Claude chat with a lot more access to your tools, to your files, with the ability to create and save in the future. And here's what matters to you. You don't really need to understand every single line of code that it writes. You just need to be able to describe what you want. So in terms of the interface, once we're in this Code tab here, you're able to create a new session to get started. Here you can see that I have a bunch of other older sessions that I can click into and go back to that, which will have the context of what I was talking to them about. But let's just go into this new session. One of the first things you're going to have to do is choose what folder this Claude Code runs in. Right now I have it set for my entire user folder. I'm using a Mac here, but you can keep it to just your documents folder or even a subfolder within documents called Claude. Whatever you want to do to limit the amount of access it gets to your files. After that, it's this chat box here. You're able to write whatever you want. We'll get into that in detail. You should also think through what model you want to use for that use case. For example, Opus is one of the strongest models that Claude has right now. It's great. It produces really good outputs, but it also costs a lot more. So if you want to manage your cost and you don't need something as complex as a full app, then you can use a Sonnet. This is also really good in terms of output, but a little bit more affordable than Opus. And then finally, Haiku works enough for very simple tasks, but if it gets more complex, like with coding, you usually don't necessarily want to use Haiku. I think you need access to subscriptions for Claude if you want to start using these tools. I think even the base Pro subscription should be enough. I'm using the Max here just because I use it every single day, and I'll get into all the great use cases in the future. A few other things here is there's a more options button here, this plus button here. You're able to add files, photos, any reference you want this model to think through. And you can also connect it to things like Google Drive, to Notion, and there's a lot more connectors you can connect to, like Airtable. So it really gives Claude all the tools that it needs to build what you're telling it to build. All right, let's go ahead and build something together so we can see all these great skills work in action. So to start it off, we're going to choose the folder that you want to be creating all these files in. You can just create a new folder wherever you want, just so you know where all the files are. So let's create a new folder for this project so we can provide an example here. Let's just call it Claude Project Proposal Generator. You can name it however you want. You can keep it simple. Let's go ahead and create it. And now the first step, if you remember, is we're going to create a Claude.md file. And that's going to be the file that whenever I'm pulling and building things from this folder, the Claude Project Proposal Generator folder, I want it to automatically reference all the components I'm putting into Claude.md. And so in this case, I wanted to have context about my business, Pathlight AI, since I'm using this proposal generator to create future proposals for my clients. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tell it to create, just using the chat box, a Claude.md file with this information about my business. And I'm going to drop a prompt here that I built earlier. You can see it. It's basically, I run Pathlight AI. It's an AI automation agency. I want the tone to be professional. I want you to use terms like investments, always include these sections, project scope, timeline, deliverables, keep it under 2 pages, etc. So you can customize this however you want. I'm just going to use this for now for simplicity. So You're gonna enter, you can press enter here, or you can just press this orange button, but it's gonna now start working through. And so it's gonna connect to that folder that we were just looking at and create this file. Sometimes it's gonna take longer. I think it really depends on which models you're working with or what kind of file you're creating. So you're gonna see something like this. This looks a little bit complex, but all Claude Code needs your permission to create or pull or do anything with your files. And we can go later in terms of how to bypass this, but in the beginning, you want to make sure that it's actually creating things that you told it to create. So some of the things I would check here is this the right folder path that I want it to create the CLAUDE.md file? Is this the message that I put in here? Generally looks okay. All the stuff that I just showed you. And there's a few different things you can do here. If you deny, it's not going to go through and the change won't happen. You can either click always allow for a session. So a session is whenever you start a new conversation in Claude Code, and it's going to retain that level of context for that session specifically. But unless we give it explicit instructions, it's going to limit that scope to this session. So one of the things we can do is allow this to write into MD files for this session, or we can only allow it to update it once, in which case this will pop up again if we're making a similar request. Typically, if I know what I want Claude to do, usually click always allow for a session so that I don't have to continuously see this warning message. I want it to run as automatically as possible while I'm still in control. So now it's saying it created it. We can go take a look at it later, but trust me when it says it's created there. And I can leave a screenshot above of where it's actually saved. So that was pretty simple. There wasn't a lot of coding involved from my end. There was a lot of coding that happened in the back end where Claude Code actually created a file, put in the text that we wanted, and now it knows to refer to this MD file for anything that I'm creating in this session. So it will know to pull from this Claude.md file whenever we are working in this folder, Claude Project Proposal Generator. Okay, the next step is to create some skills. You're able to create as many skills as you want. I think over time, you do want to have a wide arsenal of skills. But first, let's just go through the steps of creating one. And as a reminder, skills is something that you're creating for Claude to specifically refer to for a task that you're giving it. And it's pretty smart, so it's going to know when to pull the skill based on the context of your inputs. In this case, let's set up a skill of how to lay out the format of the proposal document so that I can make sure that it's consistent each time I go to Claude Code and tell it to come up with a proposal. Again, it's going to refer back to that CLAUDE.md for context about my business, but you may create whatever else on top to satisfy my request of creating a proposal. So here's what we're going to do. We're just going to say, let's create a skill called Proposal Writer with following instructions. And then I'm just pasting something that I worked on before. And this kind of looks like a system prompt if you're familiar with using that with your LLMs. It's pretty straightforward. You're just giving Claude the role that it needs to play. In this case, it's a proposal writer. And when it's writing it, here are some specific criteria that I wanted to follow. Things like in the opening, acknowledge the client's challenge. And then we'll figure out what the next 3 to 5 bullet points would be to fix that using automation, so on and so forth. Things like rules, never mention specific technologies like NNN or APIs, so the client doesn't have to feel overwhelmed with technological jargon. Every proposal must include at least one concrete number. You can go pretty crazy with this depending on how you want the outcome to show. So let's go ahead and send this. So now it's going to go ahead and create another document in this folder, and we'll know to refer to this proposal writer skill. You can either prompt it specifically to use this skill, or it's generally going to pick up the context based on your request. So if you're saying, hey, write me a new proposal for this client, it's going to go ahead and refer back to that skill and make sure that it's following those instructions. So here you see it again, that it's asking you for approval. Again, always allow for session is usually default for me. And then essentially, if you don't have this already, it's going to create a new skill. And then now you can refer back to this whenever you need it to go through the skill. So we'll see that soon in execution as we are creating this document. So before we move on to actually using these skills in the CLAUDE.md file that we created, I want to go back to something that we were talking about earlier. It's this button down here that says ask permissions. So if you remember, every time we put in a prompt and Claude had to go in to create a file or to read a file, it was asking us for approval. If you want to bypass that, there's a few different options here. There's one here called auto accept edits. So this one isn't for all the different confirmation it needs. For example, if you're trying to create something, it's still going to need your approval. But for things that are making edits to existing files, for example, if you click this auto accept edits, it's going to do those things automatically without asking you each time. Plan mode, let me get into this in a bit. The next one is the bypass permission. So this is what kind of breaks the game. If you turn this on, Claude will never ask you for approval. And that comes with a lot of risks. So I would be hesitant to use this for most workflows. But for example, you're just creating the same proposal again that you've created 10 times. Then you can just turn this on and make sure that it's not asking you for confirmation each time you're creating that same document. So again, you don't want to do this too often. You do want to make sure you have some control over what Claude's doing, because sometimes it might make mistakes and you don't want to waste time going back and forth trying to fix things. So the last thing here is plan mode. And this is a really cool trick. It's something that I tend to use if I'm building something a little bit more complex. Probably not for something like this, that's a simple proposal generator. But if we're thinking about creating an app or a workflow automation, then there's a lot of different moving pieces and components. So instead of having Claude go in and build something from scratch that you look back and you're like, hey, why did you even create this in the first place? You can use this plan mode. So before Claude Code executes anything, it's going to go through your instructions. It's going to pull from your Claude.md file. It's going to pull from your CLAUDE.md file. And then it's going to lay out a plan of what it wants to create. So this will actually help you go back and forth with it a little bit, tweak things, make sure that it's actually following the structure that you wanted. And you can obviously edit it to make sure the output is exactly how you want it. And then once you're ready, you can press approve and it's going to go and actually start executing. So why don't we try this plan mode now? Okay, so let's go ahead and actually create a proposal based on all the things we've created. Let's say generate a proposal for Williams Company. They spend 3 hours every day manually processing invoices from email. They need a system to automatically pull invoices and update a spreadsheet, then emails the client. Let's keep it like that, and let's see what it does. So as you can see here, it's launching that skill that we just created, proposal writer. So we know that it's referencing the right skill file, which is pretty cool, right? You didn't actually say proposal writer anywhere here, but Claude is picking up that context based on the input and knows to pick it up. So now this is going to be, okay, so it actually went ahead and created the proposal right away here. I guess it wasn't complex enough for it to try plan mode, but let's try something a little bit different. Then build me Gantt chart of how we are going to execute this in HTML form. So let's see if that triggers plan mode. Cool, here we go. This is that plan mode that I was just talking about. It lays out based on the context that it picked up. Here's the plan that it's going to go through: phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. This is a little dramatic in terms of how many weeks it takes, but it's basically a way for you to know what it's planning to do. And you can tell it, actually, instead of HTML, use JavaScript or something like that to make sure that you're tailoring this output in the way you want. So just because we do want to keep this pretty simple and we're just working through a proposal, let's take a quick look through the proposal that it created. Proposal for Williams Company. Here's the pain point that your client is feeling. Here's what we're going to build. Here's how it works. Here's the timeline, how much it's going to cost, etc., etc. So this lays out all the information that we have from our Skills.md as well as Claude.md. And so depending on how you tweak that, this could look a lot longer. It could look a lot more detailed. It could look basically however you want it to look. But let's say you want this to actually be in a document. Let's just say export this proposal into a Word document in my folder. And so unfortunately right now, Claude has limitations in connecting directly with Google Doc or Google Sheets to create new documents. It's able to go in and access them and pull information from them, but creating it, I think, is limited so far. I'm sure it'll change over time. But right now, I just asked it to create a Word document, which it's able to do. So now it's going through. You can see a lot of code that's being run here. I don't think you really need to understand every single piece here, but if for some reason you're confused as to why it's doing things like this, you can always ask it directly here of, hey, why are you building this way? Or you can even copy paste that and put it into your LLM, the Claude chat, or you can use another tool like Gemini to better understand why it's doing the things that it's doing. Right now, it's pretty simple what we're asking it to do, which is to create a proposal. So let's just wait and see where it goes. Okay, looks like it's done. So it's saying that the proposal has been saved in this folder here. Let me go to that folder and pull it up. Okay, cool. And so now you will be able to see this document that I created for Williams Company for today's date. You can see Pathlight AI up here. This is my company that I'm running, so it was able to pick that up from CLAUDE.md. And then you can see all the stuff that we were looking at laid out like this. I don't love the formatting here. I don't love the font that it used. And so those are things that you can update your Claude.md file or your skill.md file. So in the future, whenever Claude Code runs for this folder, it's going to know to make those edits in the future so that you're not going in and tweaking it yourself directly. Okay, awesome. So that was really great. There's a lot of different ways of using this, but let me take it a step further and do a couple more things. One is custom/commands. So this is a really nifty tool that you can use to automate your processes a little bit more. It's basically a way for you to build a set of instructions that you're typing in. I know earlier we were making skills, which is basically a document that you're referring to, and Claude Code goes in and picks up that skill based on the context of the conversation. But if you wanted to have a very specific set of things that you wanted to do, then you can create something called a custom/command. And so let's just walk through it together. It's basically creating a set of instructions like shortcuts so that Claude recognizes it instantly and goes through very specific workflows based on the instructions. Let's create one together, create a / command called generate proposal. When I use it, Claude should ask me 3 things. Client's name and business type. What problem to solve? Depends whether it's a small, big project. So you can create a lot of different custom/commands here for whatever use case you do. Typically, if you want it to run different things for different stages of your build, you might want to reference generate proposal in the beginning and then execution command later. Okay, done. Now you can use generate proposal and it will ask you these 3 questions. So let's go ahead and try it. Generate proposal for Williams Company. Let's do that again. Or actually, let's go for a different name. Let's go for Michael's. All right, cool. So it's going to ask all the questions that we prompted it to do. Who is the client? Let's see. Michael's company sells cookies. What problem do they need solved? Too much manual work. Small, big, let's say small project. So I gave it all the context that it needs to be able to create a proposal, and let's see if they actually create the proposal. Cool. So it actually updated the proposal based on the context that I provided it for Michael's company. Has generally similar structure here, mostly because I have that skill MD of how to lay out this proposal, but it's going to have slightly different numbers, slightly different context. It's going to be customized depending on the information you feed it. So as you can imagine, when you're prompting that /command, you're able to provide a lot more context so that it creates a proposal that's more tailored to your client. You can even add things like transcription summary that you use from whatever AI recording tool with your client, feed that in here and be like, hey, can you create a proposal based on that? And it's going to do a really good job within this framework that you created based on those files. So the last tip is recovery. And it's how do we deal with things not looking the way we want it to? There's a lot of different ways of solving these problems. We can be going into our Claude.md file to fix it, skill.md file to fix it. We can even create some more custom /commands. But the most important thing is debugging these things on your own by using this chat box. So let's try a few different things here. Let's say this doesn't look great. Let's add a lot more detail to the investment section, including 3 tiers of pricing. All right, let's see what it does here. Okay, cool. Let's see what it did here. So generally it looks pretty similar in the beginning, but now when we come down to the investment, there's 3 different tiers: starter, growth, scale. Pretty interesting names that it chose for itself, but this is maybe what I wanted, maybe not. And so if I didn't think this was looking good, then I can just say, hey, undo this change and revert back to previous version. Okay, I didn't think it picked up what I wanted. Rebuild the proposal based on original instructions. Cool. So it looks like it went back to that same format that we had before, just one tier of pricing here. So I think the biggest takeaway here is that you can play around with this however you want. If you see an output, you don't really like it, tell Claude exactly what you want it to look like. You can even share screenshots of other templates or websites that you wanted to refer to because you like their design. Okay, great. So we covered 6 great skills that you can use for Claude Code. It's pretty easy to get started. I think the best way to learn is to actually try things yourself. And if you run into an obstacle, asking Claude to fix it. And I think that's the best way to learn all the different tools that are out there. There's a lot more with Claude Code beyond just these 6 tools, but I think this will be enough just to get you started and then build something creative on your own. That about wraps it up. Hopefully this video was helpful for you. I think there's a lot of great skills that you can apply beyond this, but I think the most important part is to get started. I'm very excited to see what you guys create with Claude Code. Please leave any fun projects you're working on or anything new that you're going to create down below in the comment section. But otherwise, thanks for watching this to the end. Please leave me a like or a subscribe. That would really help me out. Otherwise, this was really fun. Looking forward to the next video.